Meanwhile, claims made by Boris Johnson during the final Conservative leadership hustings last night have been challenged by the EU. Holding up a kipper to the audience, Mr Johnson said that the EU forces companies to pack their fish with an ice pillow, using it as an example of legislation we would leave behind after Brexit. Here we go.
I want you to consider this kipper. This kipper, which has been presented to me just now by the editor of a national newspaper, who received it from a kipper smoker in the Isle of Man, who is utterly furious because after decades of sending kippers like this through the post, he has had his costs massively increased by Brussels bureaucrats who have insisted that each kipper must be accompanied by a plastic ice pillow. Pointless, expensive, environmentally damaging health and safety.
Well, the EU have had their say on that this lunchtime. Our Europe correspondent Mark Stone is standing by in Brussels for us this afternoon. So it's sort of less of a smoked herring and more of a red herring, really.
Very good, Kay. Yeah, a red herring. It's cobblers, to be honest. Multiple layers of nonsense, to be frank, with what Boris Johnson was claiming in what was the main gag of his speech last night, his last at the hustings in the Excel Centre in London. It got a raw in the packet when they're sent from wherever it might be to somewhere else in the UK is British legislation. It's not EU legislation, and that much was made clear by the Commission spokesperson for food safety. Clearly they weren't best pleased at what, incidentally, the Commissioner for Food Safety called fake news in a tweet yesterday. Have a listen to what the spokesperson said.
The case described by Mr. Johnson falls outside the scope of the EU legislation, and it's purely a UK national competence. So I hope this is clear, and the rules must be checked with the national authorities. There are strict rules when it comes to fresh fish, but this kind of rules don't apply to processed fishery products. I'm talking about the temperature and the exact case that he was explaining.
And so I say several layers of nonsense with what he claimed, because not only is it not EU legislation, it's British legislation, but the Isle of Man is not part of the European Union, nor incidentally is it part of the United Kingdom. So the reason that these ice pillows were put in these kippers, ridiculous as it sounds, is because British legislation, they were sending it from the Isle of Man, not in the EU, not in the United Kingdom, to the United Kingdom, and therefore British legislation demanded that they do that. The other problem with Boris Johnson's statement last night is that whatever you are producing in the UK, if you are selling it to the European Union market, it has to abide by the regulations of that destination market. So it's wrong of him to suggest that we, as Britain, outside the EU, can be free of EU regulation. We can for products that we're not selling to the EU, but as you know, quite a proportion of our market is to the European Union. And in those instances, whether it's kippers or cars, you're going to have to abide by EU legislation.
Okay, for now, Mark, thanks very much indeed. So Mark, like